right now, you probably have a supercomputer sitting within arm's reach.
Yeah, or maybe it's right in your pocket.
Exactly. It's this little rectangle of glass and metal, and it's capable of processing like billions of calculations per second.
It's crazy when you really think about it.
It is. It connects you to basically all of recorded human knowledge instantly. So, theoretically, it is the ultimate tool for human productivity.
Theoretically being the operative word there.
Right, because why is it that we mostly use this miraculous device to just stare at 15-second videos of strangers dancing?
Or to furiously doom scroll through the news while waiting for coffee.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what we're looking at today. Welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, it is the great pocket-sized paradox of our time, really.
The smartphone is engineered from the ground up to be this world-changing tool, right? But in practice, because of how the user interfaces are actually designed, it functions primarily as a distraction device.
Right, because the app ecosystems have to monetize our eyeballs, so they commoditize our attention.
It becomes a cage that traps your attention in the present moment. I was actually reading through the sources for today's deep dive, and I was struck by how they frame what this constant digital barrage does to us biologically.
Oh, the defensive crouch concept.
Yes. Because we are bombarded with endless notifications and algorithmic feeds, our biological brain is essentially forced into this defensive crouch.
I mean, that is just a brilliant way to conceptualize it.
Yeah.
If you think about human evolution, your brain is a remarkable machine for high-level synthesis.
It's meant for deep thinking.
Exactly. It is designed for imagination, for spotting really complex patterns, for solving massive problems.
But because of modern information overload, we don't let it do that anymore.
No, we don't. Instead, we basically force our neocortex to act as a cheap, temporary storage facility.
Right, we use it to hold on to fleeting thoughts or, grocery lists.
Random articles we want to read later, emails we need to reply to.
We are essentially using a biological supercomputer as a soggy sticky note.
A soggy, sticky note. Unfortunately, that's incredibly accurate.
Which brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We are going straight to the heart of this problem to rescue your biological brain from that defensive crouch.
And we're doing that by walking through a concrete blueprint.
Right. A blueprint for transforming an Android smartphone from a slot machine for your attention into a true cognitive powerhouse.
We're talking about building what the knowledge management world calls an external neocortex, or a second brain.
It's worth noting that our sources focus heavily on the Android ecosystem today, right?
Yeah, because Android naturally allows for the deep system automation and open local file management that this specific architecture really requires.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to ask you, the listener, a very direct question right off the bat. When you pick up your phone, is it a tool you are actively using to build your future, or is it a cage that traps you in the present?
It's a pretty heavy question.
It really is. But by the end of this conversation, the goal is to equip you with the exact systemic shifts required to make sure your answer is the former.
So let's start with the absolute foundation, which is the capture layer.
Right, because before we can organize any knowledge, we have to actually catch the raw thoughts before they vanish.
Vanish into the noise of daily life. Exactly.
I want to share a quick scenario. You're walking to your car, your hands are full of groceries, and suddenly, boom, you have the perfect opening line for that presentation you have to give on Thursday.
Oh, I know this feeling.
What usually happens next?
Well, usually you fumble for your phone, you unlock it, you get distracted by a text message from your mom.
Of course.
You open a Notes app, wait for it to load, and by the time the cursor is blinking, the phrasing is just gone. You've lost it.
Exactly. It just completely evaporates, which is why the golden rule for building a second brain is the 2-second rule.
Right. The 2-second rule basically dictates that if a thought takes more than 2 to 5 seconds to record, you simply won't do it.
Your system will fail.
Friction is the absolute enemy of genius. If there is any cognitive load required just to open the tool, your brain will subconsciously decide the idea isn't worth the effort.
So we have to optimize for frictionless entry. We need to eliminate every single tap and swipe possible.
And the Android environment offers some incredibly specific ways to do this. For instance, utilizing deep automation apps like Tasker or MacroDroid.
Yeah, the sources talk about configuring those to put a custom quick note tile right in your pull-down notification shade.
Exactly. So no matter what app you are in, you just swipe down, tap once, and a text box hovers over your screen.
You type your thought, hit enter, and it routes directly to your system's centralized inbox in the background.
And I know just hearing the word Tasker might intimidate some folks.
Oh yeah. It has a notoriously steep learning curve.
It does. But the beauty of the current ecosystem is that you don't have to be a programmer anymore. You can use platforms like TaskerNet to just click a link and download a pre-made frictionless capture configuration.
Someone else built it, you just use it. Now, what about capturing longer thoughts? Typing is great for a quick sentence, but sometimes I just need to brain dump for 5 minutes after a long meeting.
That's where tools like Gemini Live come in for high-fidelity audio capture.
You essentially just talk out loud, stream of consciousness style.
Yeah, and then you give the AI a very specific command. You say, summarize this as a structured markdown note and save it to my second brain inbox.
Which is incredibly powerful because it solves the biggest problem with voice memos.
Oh, voice memos are where ideas go to die.
They really are. You record a 10-minute ramble and you never ever listen to it again.
Exactly. But by using an AI layer to instantly transcribe, synthesize, and structure that ramble into actionable digital text.
We transform messy human speech into permanent digital infrastructure instantly.
Right. You can also use Samsung Edge panels to pin quick text widgets, or even just the Google Keep voice memo widget right on your primary home screen.
Sure, but I actually have to push back on this whole philosophy for a second.
Okay.
By making it so easy to capture every single fleeting, messy thought, aren't we just creating a massive digital junk drawer?
Well,
Let me use an analogy from the reading. Is it better to have a chaotic wide net that catches every single butterfly, every random half-baked idea, even if it's a total mess inside the net?
right.
Or is it better to have a pristine, perfectly folded net that takes just a little too long to open, meaning the butterfly completely escapes?
What's fascinating here is that when you look at the habits of highly prolific creators and thinkers, the primary metric for a capture system is strictly speed.
It's not initial quality.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
A chaotic, messy note that you captured in 2 seconds is raw material. Think of it like unrefined ore.
Okay, so you can smelt it down and refine it later.
Exactly. But a perfect, pristine insight that was never recorded because your fancy app took 6 seconds to load, that is a lost asset. You can't refine nothing.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Catch the butterfly first, figure out what species it is later.
Yes, exactly.
So let's say our wide, frictionless net has worked. We have caught 100 raw thoughts this week. They need a structured home.
Which moves us from the chaos of capture into the architecture of storage and organization.
And this is where we run into a major philosophical debate in the knowledge community.
Oh, the big one. Local first sovereignty versus cloud convenience.
Yes, the data ownership debate.
Right.
If you are going to invest years into building a professional second brain, the prevailing wisdom right now strongly argues that you need data sovereignty.
Which means your knowledge base must be private, it must be portable, and it must be permanent.
And the gold standard for this architecture right now is an app called Obsidian.
Yeah, the reason Obsidian is so heavily favored over its competitors is fundamentally about how it treats your files.
Right, it doesn't trap your thoughts in a proprietary database.
No, it stores your data as simple markdown files directly on your device's local hard drive.
Let's actually pause and explain that because I think Markdown sounds like developer jargon to a lot of people.
Fair point.
If I'm explaining this to my dad, what is a Markdown file?
A markdown file which ends in .md is just raw, plain text.
So there is no hidden formatting code.
None. No proprietary software layers. It uses incredibly simple keyboard symbols to format things. So if you want a word to be bold, you just type 2 asterisks before and after it.
And the beauty of this is absolute permanence.
Exactly. Because it's just raw text, you could take an Obsidian Vault on a thumb drive, plug it into a dusty computer from 1995, open a basic notepad app, and your thoughts would still be perfectly readable.
You own them forever. Contrast that with a tool like Notion, which is immensely popular because it's cloud-based and has beautiful visual templates.
Or Cascade, which has all those flashy AI agents.
Right, but with those cloud-only apps, you don't actually hold the files on your physical device.
If their servers go down, if they get hacked, or if they decide to triple their subscription price next year.
Your brain is locked behind their paywall.
Exactly. Future-proofing your knowledge is a strategic necessity. A second brain isn't for next month's project. It is a lifelong asset.
Now, people naturally ask, well, if my files are just sitting locally on my Android phone, how do I get them on my laptop without a cloud service?
The solution there is using background syncing tools like SyncThing or FolderSync.
They operate quietly in the background, mirroring your local text folder across your phone, your tablet, and your PC.
Right, over an encrypted connection. So you get the convenience of the cloud, but you retain total uncompromising ownership.
All right, so we have a completely private, future-proof vault of text files, but within 3 weeks, you're going to have 500 messy notes in that vault.
So easily.
How do we stop our beautifully secure local folder from becoming the exact same digital junk drawer we just escaped? How do we arrange the files?
If you look at the absolute best practices right now, the gold standard for organization is the PARA method.
PRA. That stands for Projects, Areas, Resources, and Archives.
Right. It forces a very strict logical sort order based on actionability rather than topic.
I really want to get into the weeds on this because I think PRA sounds great in theory, but the boundaries are really tough to manage in practice.
They can be tricky at first.
I struggle with this all the time. Let's say I am actively planning a vacation to Japan, but I've also been saving interesting articles about Japanese architecture for years. Where is the line between a project and a resource?
That is the vital distinction,
Yeah.
and defining it is crucial to making the system work. A project is a live, active effort with a specific, concrete deadline.
So like book Tokyo hotels by Friday.
Or finalize Q3 budget, exactly.
Yeah.
A resource, on the other hand, is a passive interest or ongoing reference material.
So Japanese architecture history.
Or graphic design inspiration.
Right.
Maintaining an ironclad boundary between the two is what prevents your active daily work from being buried under the sheer weight of data that is merely interesting.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because when you sit down to work on a Tuesday morning, you only open your projects folder. You don't want to accidentally get sucked into reading a 3,000-word essay on ancient Roman aqueducts when you need to be finishing a client proposal that is due in 2 hours.
So projects are highly actionable, resources are passive reference, archives are just cold storage for finished things.
Yep.
And areas are your ongoing responsibilities, things like your health, your finances, or your marriage.
Things that require standards but don't have a final finish line where you can check a box and say, okay, my health is completely done forever.
Right. Precisely. It organizes your knowledge by how urgently you need it.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've captured the data without friction. We've stored it sovereignly in raw text. We've organized it using PRA.
But here is the next major bottleneck.
Storing data securely is completely pointless if you can't retrieve it when you actually need it.
Having 10,000 perfectly organized notes doesn't help me if I can't find the exact quote I need during a meeting.
We have to transition from just having flat storage files to having a dynamic thinking partner.
And this is arguably the most significant evolution in personal computing happening right now.
We are moving away from traditional searching for exact keywords, right?
Yeah, we are moving toward interrogating your data using something called RAGI, Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Let's break that down because it sounds incredibly dense. How does this actually work in practice?
Think about tools like Google's Notebook LM. You can literally point Notebook LM directly at your local Obsidian folder.
And when you ask it a question, it doesn't just scour the general internet.
Right. It doesn't look at the noisy, hallucination-prone internet. It synthesizes an answer based only on the verified notes and thoughts you have explicitly put into your vault.
It provides what is known as grounded intelligence.
Exactly.
Furthermore, on the Android side of things, the App Search API or specialized knowledge apps like MEM allow you to do semantic searches across your entire local ecosystem.
Which is a massive shift.
Let me explain the difference here, because it is massive. In the old days, if I searched my notes for the phrase strategies for focus, the computer would only look for documents that contain the exact letters FOCUS.
Right.
If I had a brilliant note titled How to Maintain Deep Attention, it wouldn't show up. Semantic search understands the actual concept you are looking for. It understands intent.
Exactly. It maps the meaning behind your words.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. I love this analogy from the sources. Using this kind of local AI over your second brain is exactly like having a brilliant, tireless research assistant.
But this specific assistant has only ever read your diary, your personal notes, your past projects, and your specific book highlights.
Meaning the advice they give you isn't generic, recycled web advice. It is 100% tailored to your own past insights and lived experiences.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this fundamentally shifts your identity. You stop being a mere collector of information.
Which is honestly what most of us are when we bookmark 100 articles we know we'll never read.
Guilty. But instead, you become a synthesizer. Your second brain is no longer just a digital filing cabinet where ideas go to collect dust. It becomes an active collaborator that surfaces brilliant connections you forgot you even made.
It's an incredible vision, but there is a massive elephant in the room that we have to address.
Not to hear it.
This all sounds amazing on paper, But in reality, I open my phone to ask my AI librarian a profound question about my notes, and boom, I see a bright red notification bubble on the Instagram icon.
And it's game over.
My thumb twitches, I tap it, and 30 minutes later, I am watching a video of a dog riding a skateboard, and I have completely forgotten what I was originally doing.
It happens to the best of us.
Even with the perfect AI and the cleanest pair array structure, the whole system will fail if the visual environment of the phone is still engineered to hijack our dopamine. We have to physically redesign the interface.
We absolutely do. And this brings us to the concept of digital minimalism and what is effectively called monk mode.
The first step is radically changing what you see when you unlock your screen. The prevailing strategy is to replace the standard, colorful, icon-heavy Android grid with a minimalist, text-based launcher.
Like Niagara Launcher or Before Launcher.
Exactly. The psychology behind this is vital to understand.
Right, because those colorful, rounded icons on your standard home screen, they aren't just aesthetic choices.
They are specifically designed by behavioral psychologists to trigger a dopamine response in your brain.
They look like shiny candy. By removing the icons and replacing them with a simple monochrome list of text words, you strip the phone of its slot machine qualities.
Suddenly, opening your phone feels like opening a sterile toolbox rather than a chaotic toy chest.
You hide all the social and entertainment apps deep in an app drawer.
The only tools immediately visible on your screen should be for capture, search, and reading your knowledge vault.
And then there's this amazing concept called the lead domino strategy.
Which is heavily inspired by the one thing productivity philosophy, right?
The 4x2 widget strategy.
Exactly. You place a massive widget on your home screen that takes up half the real estate, and that widget displays the text of only your #1 project note from Obsidian.
So if your biggest priority this month is passing your real estate exam, every single time you unlock your phone, your primary life objective is the very first thing you are forced to look at.
It is a constant visual anchor pulling you back to your goals.
You're also utilizing Android's deep system settings like focus mode or work profiles to create rigid notification silos.
So you can set it so that during your designated deep work hours, only your second brain apps, your notes, your calendar, maybe your calls from family have system permission to interrupt you or vibrate your device.
And everything else is silently batched for later.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here because this sounds incredibly extreme to a lot of people.
It definitely does.
I've had friends look at my phone when I've tried setups like this and they think I'm crazy. Isn't stripping a $1,000 marvel of technology down to basic black and white text taking away all the joy and utility of having a smartphone?
Are we really just paying a premium to turn our devices back into 1990s flip phones?
That's exactly what people ask.
It definitely sounds restrictive until you reframe what the device actually is. The user interface of your phone is essentially the visual environment of your mind for several hours every single day.
Oh, I see.
Would you try to write a novel in the middle of a screaming casino?
Of course not.
By stripping away that visual noise, you aren't devolving the phone. You are elevating it. You are reclassing the device as a highly specialized surgical tool that serves your high-level goals.
Protecting the environment of the mind. I really like that framing.
Mhm.
But that leads us to the final hurdle. And honestly, this is the hardest one for me.
The human element.
Because the environment can be sterile, the AI can be primed and ready, the capture widget can be frictionless, but none of that software matters without the human element. No app, no widget, no automation can fix a lack of personal discipline.
This is the hard truth of the knowledge management community. A second brain is a practice. It is not a product.
You cannot just download Obsidian, slap a minimalist theme on your phone, and magically become a highly productive genius.
The entire architecture operates on a core habit loop. Capture, process, connect, review. You have to actively convert your input into actual output.
And I have a confession to make here. I have fallen hard into what is called research addiction.
Oh, it's an incredibly seductive trap.
It really is. We hoard notes, we clip endless articles, we save transcripts, we categorize everything perfectly, and it makes us feel like we are doing highly productive work.
It feels like progress.
But if we never actually convert that input into an output, if we never write the difficult email, if we never build the business plan, if we never make the final decision, we aren't actually doing anything.
We're just procrastinating with better software.
Yes.
That is a phenomenal insight. Research without synthesis is just digital hoarding. And the only way to break that addiction is through the Sunday Weekly Review.
What does that actually look like in practice?
Once a week, you have to sit down and do the manual labor. You open that inbox where all your frictionless 2-second captures went. You process them.
So you move the raw ideas into their proper PIRA folders.
Exactly. You build bidirectional links between concepts.
Let's explain bidirectional linking real quick. The community often calls this Zettelkasten-style linking.
Right.
Basically, instead of just putting a note in a folder and forgetting it, you create hyperlinks between your own documents. If you have a note about diet, you link it directly to your note about sleep quality.
Over time, your local text files literally start to look and function like synapses connecting in a biological brain.
Exactly. You are physically weaving the web of your knowledge.
But the most crucial part of the weekly review, and the part people hate doing the most, is deleting.
Trashing things.
We have to aggressively delete redundant information, half-baked ideas that don't make sense anymore, and resources you're realistically never going to read.
If you don't religiously review and prune your notes, your carefully constructed second brain will inevitably revert back into a digital junk drawer.
The review process is the engine that actually drives the synthesis. It's not the apps, it's the habit.
Wow. So, to briefly recap the journey we've mapped out for you today on this deep dive, rescuing your attention and building an Android second brain starts with establishing a frictionless 2-second capture habit so ideas don't escape.
Right.
Then it moves to claiming absolute local-first data sovereignty, using plain text tools like Obsidian, and organizing that chaos with the strict boundaries of the PIR method.
From there, we transition to interrogating those notes with grounded AI intelligence.
Turning a storage drive into a thinking partner. We protect our focus by physically redesigning our phone interface into a minimalist monk mode. And finally, we commit to the weekly review to ensure all that input actually turns into real-world output.
It is a profound shift in how we interact with technology. We are moving from passive consumption to active curation.
And it really changes everything.
It does. And I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over as you look at your own devices this week, building on everything we've discussed today.
I love a good thought experiment. Let's hear it.
If you successfully offload all of your low-level memory, your complex task scheduling, and your factual retention to this frictionless external system, what kind of wildly creative, high-level thinking will your biological brain naturally evolve to prioritize with all of that newly freed up space?
What actually happens when the biological brain finally gets to stand up from its defensive crouch? I love that.
Just something to think about.
You know, looking back at this little rectangle of glass and metal sitting on the desk, it doesn't have to be a cage for your attention. It really can be an external neocortex.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. I highly encourage you to pick just one specific area today. Maybe just set up a quick capture widget on your home screen and start saving those butterflies.